Welcome back to another edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary. Today we're going to go through the 13 players that Rutgers had entered the portal yesterday, talk about where they stood on the depth chart. We're going to talk about some potential transfer portal targets. Richie's got some info on some guys that Rutgers is showing interest in. And we'll talk about the DC role and what we're hearing on that. But first, this podcast is presented to you by Knight and Day Apparel. Hey, Rutgers fans, get ready to slam dunk your style with Knight and Day Apparel. Cheer on your Scarlet Knights this basketball season in our exclusive Rutgers gear. From trend-setting designs to lifestyle garments, we've got you covered with everything you need to support your team, comfort and flair. Stand out in the crowd and show your passion for Rutgers basketball with designs that celebrate every dribble, dunk, and victory. Use our promo code Rutgers Rivals to get 10% off your purchase. Don't wait, head to Knight and Day Apparel today and gear up for game day. Go Knights. We are also presented to you by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds from everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, and UFC, head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get a welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Okay, so Rutgers had 13 players enter the portal yesterday, which was also the final day for players to enter the portal in this window. The caveat there is that sometimes the paperwork takes a day or two to process, so you might hear a couple names get released in the coming days, but probably after tomorrow, I think it's safe to say everybody who can enter the portal will have entered the portal unless there's a coaching change, which unlikely at this point, but it can happen. So I am going to share this screen and we can kind of talk about each player. This is the list that you have compiled here for the website, Rich.
Okay. Simple enough.
So the first is quarterback Colin O'Sullivan. This was a walk-on quarterback who probably was never going to even sniff the field. Not a big loss there. And I also want to throw another caveat on top of this. The roster restrictions take place starting, I believe, in the spring. So you have to be under 105 players on your total roster. You can give up to 105 scholarships. So, how you used to have, 30-plus walk-ons probably isn't going to be a thing anymore. So you have to have 105 total between scholarship and walk-on players. So that's why you see a lot of guys entering the portal right now. So the first person to enter was Colin O'Sullivan, and then Donovan Delaney Jr., another walk-on. And Rich, stop me at any point if you want to talk about anybody.
Colin was just a scout team quarterback mostly. These guys are like, it's not like they're. I know a lot of people are like, who the hell is that guy? Who the hell is that guy? They're great practice bodies at the end of the day. And that's what walk-ons were. And now it's essentially not walk-ons anymore. So it's weird. I don't know how they're going to divvy it up now because, you get more scholarships because you get 105 total. But, those extra 20 guys are now scholarship-worthy players, and now they're going to be used as practice bodies too. It's going to be really interesting how they use this and how they kind of do it because some teams are going full-out 105 scholarships. Some teams, I heard Rutgers isn't going to do that. They're probably going to go 90, 95-ish and then use 10 or maybe more as walk-ons still. And then you can do partial scholarships as well. You don't have to give a full scholarship to these kids anymore. It used to be hey, the minute a kid's remember the two-sport athletes? If Juwan Harris, the minute he stepped foot on that football field, or Keontae Hamilton, the minute he stepped on that football field, he's a football scholarship. Now that's not the case anymore. Now you can give partial ships like wrestling did, like baseball did. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they divvy it up, but it just means that every roster spot matters even more now. And more so as we really didn't cover walk-ons all that much at the Power 5 level, I think every single commitment we're going to have coverage on no matter what now.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And you might only have up 2 or 3 walk-ons a year at this point coming into the program.
It's a shame.
Donovan Delaney Jr., the running back, has entered the portal. Again, a guy that I didn't even – no offense to any players who have entered, but I didn't even know who he was. DeAndre Johnson was a scholarship receiver. He was massive, 6'8", 211 pounds. I always was like, okay, I'd love to see how they implement this guy because you don't typically see receivers this big, and I think he was most well known for the big drops he had in the spring game.
Yeah.
Um, he flashed some, but just obviously couldn't put it all together. He'll be probably dropping down a level. Moselle
He's one.
Williams.
Oh,
Go
real
ahead.
quick before you go past DeAndre. DeAndre is interesting because like you see a 6'8" guy out there at the receiver room, and you're like, holy shit, like he's pretty big. Like
Mm-hmm.
former basketball recruit, had basketball offers. I'm intrigued to see what he does. I know he's going to stay. He wants to stay with football, but like you still have 3 years left. I would even consider the hoops thing again. Like obviously it's not going to be at Rutgers, but like drop down a couple levels, go play hoops at like the D2 level, have some fun with it. I just can't see a 6'8" receiver ever working out. Like I think there's only like one all time in all football history that's like ever worked out. And I can't remember his name, but I remember we looked it up when he originally committed, and it's not a realistic idea to have anyone above like even 6'6" is like close to pushing it, but you can get away with
Yeah.
that 6'7", 6'8". Like you're not a receiver at the end of the day. I'm sorry, it's just not going to work out.
Yep. 100% agree. Moselle Williams was a tackle prospect who I was pretty high on. He had a lot of offers coming out of high school, but just didn't put it together. What'd you hear happened with Moselle?
Yeah, I mean it's hard because there's a couple tackles in the program ahead of him. He's at the point where he wants to play, and I kind of understand it. I could see him dropping down to the G5 level, see what he does there, and maybe bounce back up if he does well. But Taj White's ahead of him, Tyler Needham's ahead of him, Dominic Rivera is a guy that came in after him and is ahead of him. I feel like I'm missing someone else. There's another tackle I'm missing I can't think of, but a lot of guys just surpassed him, and that's really it. He was a kid that actually came in sort of similar situation to Holland Pierce. Came in like 340-ish, 330-ish, got down to 307. So I think he's a kid that probably goes back closer to home to Florida, to be honest with you.
Would make sense. Cole Kozlowski is a guy who went to LaSalle College, same graduating class as new defensive tackle and transfer in from JMU, Daryl Dengoe. I'm sorry. So they went to high school, graduated together. He's got 3 years of eligibility. He was another walk-on. I mean, it's just so hard for walk-ons to break into, even the 2 deep of a Power 4 program.
Yeah.
So no surprise there.
He's a little smaller too. I mean, it is interesting though because him and Sam Brown had talks with Dengoe when he was on campus, and Dengoe told me like he's like these two help sell the program to me. They came from I'm familiar with them. They're friends of mine, and I mean credit to Cole for doing that, knowing that he was probably on his way out despite everything. So yeah, 6'3", 287 walk on. Like I'm sorry, it's just this is the way of college football now. All these kids are going to drop down a level, and I think that competition level at the G5 is going to get an effect of it. I think the competition level at the FCS is going to affect even down to D2 and D3. Like I think those levels are going to get better because there's just not roster spots at any FBS level now.
And that's a testament to what you were saying about how he stuck around to, talk about how good the program is, and then he ended up transferring. It's the second offseason in a row. A big transfer portal guy was told to come here from a high school teammate. Last year, it was Demir Miller being told by Aaron Young that, this is where you need to be. They'll help develop you, all those things. And then he left right after the person committed. Same thing with Kozlowski here. So I think just credit to the coaching staff again for, I think a lot of these guys appreciate the honesty. A lot of these guys appreciate how hard it is to play at Rutgers, but that doesn't mean, that it's not a good place to be to develop guys.
Culture.
Culture. This one was a little surprising because he had seen a little bit of playing time. David, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Onua. So he played this season in 7 games and had 2 tackles, mostly a special teamer. But again, it's just everything's so crunched now. I mean, they probably have to make decisions that they normally wouldn't like to make. So bummer there.
I mean, I think he drops down a level or two. I could see a Harrisimiak being like, hey, man, like I need a veteran that can just kind of stabilize the room. You might not start. Maybe he does start at UMass. I don't know how good UMass's defensive line rotation is, but he's a little undersized, and that's an issue there. But there's just so many I shouldn't say there's so many guys there, but they're planning on bringing in at least one, if not two, edge rushers. Jordan Thompson's going to play a role. Dijibril Abdul Rahman's going to play a role. Jordan Walker's going to play a role. DJ Allen's on the two deep. Like, there's just too many guys ahead of him. And some of these young guys, like, I could see a Kanan Edwards getting some serious snaps in year one. I could see, like, I'm trying to think who else is on this roster right here. Robbie Johnson could get some snaps in year one. Like, there's a lot of guys that are just going to surpass him pretty quickly. And he's got 2 years left, so go somewhere where you can play. Maybe Delaware. Join Thomas Omonkwo down there.
Yep. The next two guys were the Lumen brothers, Tycleen and Tycool Hill. They were true freshmen. They came out of Florida, but they were from Montreal. What happened with the Lumen brothers?
One was always significantly better than the other, and they were a true package deal at the end of the day. I think the one has a really good chance. I think it was, if I can't remember which one. I'm sorry, I apologize for not remembering which one, but I believe it was Tycool Hill was the better of the two. He was growing into a defensive tackle, probably a future 3 tech. But he also had to pack on a lot of weight too. He has a chance, while the other was okay. It wasn't great, but again, package deal. And you really can't take risks anymore. If you want to be good, you have to get guys that are ready to go now. It's more, you're going to be seeing a bigger emphasis on the portal. I know Greg said in the past it's going to be like plug and play here and there with positions, but that's not the case anymore. Portal is overtaking high school recruiting. Everyone cares about the portal now. So they're going to go get 2 edge rushers. They're going to go combine that with what they have currently, like Dijibril Abdul Rahman's a guy in the 3rd year. Jordan Thompson's in year 5. Jordan Walker's in year 4 or 5, I forget. So they're going to combine that with, if you're not producing or shining as a freshman or second-year freshman, redshirt freshman, you're probably going to be out of the program, and I'm probably going to be able to find someone in the portal that's better than you, unfortunately. Yep. That's just the case.
That's unfortunate, too, because there was somebody on the board, and I'm not going to say who, but was talking about they used to play for Greg and how long it took them to even like get the footwork for like the first step correct in terms of playing a certain position. And so it's not like these players couldn't develop into something better, but it's a cost benefit thing. Do I keep a player for another year? Have they shown enough where I think we can mold them into somebody? These are all calculated risks at the end of the day. So to get a guy out of the portal who might only have 1 or 2 years left, but you know that they have all the basics down and you've seen it enough kind of upside to maybe develop them even further. It's tough. It's these are all, for the most part, I'm sure, hard decisions by both sides. So I don't want it to be the case that people think, oh, this guy is transferring out because they couldn't play as a freshman, they suck. That's not the case.
Now here's the other thing too. Like the roster spots, again, at a premium. You have 105. You can't really afford to take one and take 2 because now you're taking up 2 roster spots for one guy. And the one that was kind of shining a little bit more, I believe, was the 3 tech one. If you look at the defensive tackle rotation, they're bringing in 2. They want to bring in a 3rd one. Add that with Zaire Angoy, Sean Griffin. Dengoe has 3 years left. Braxton Kyle and Jayan Simon are probably your highest, or at least in my opinion, the best position group coming in from this recruiting cycle. And they're probably, one of them is going to get snaps, if not both of them. You're not going to really see much playing time going forward. And again, you can't really afford to do this 2 roster spots for 1 anymore. That's the case. Like now you have to, every roster spot means more. So it is tough. And honestly, I just don't see him surpassing Dengoe. I could see Braxton Kyle surpassing a lot of people in that defensive tackle room pretty quickly. And Giant Simon has a high ceiling, might have a higher ceiling than Braxton Kyle. I just think Braxton Kyle's more college ready. So it's tough. It is tough, and you're going to see a lot more cases like this going forward. Maybe not today, but specifically going forward.
Yep, totally agree. Next up was Jasir Peterson. He obviously had a long, winding journey to Rutgers. I thought he was a guy who you'd see more of this year. He only played in 1 game in his 2 seasons at Rutgers, and that was the opener against Akron this year. What'd you hear about happened with Peterson?
He's a kid that actually first committed to Rutgers as an offensive lineman, and then decommitted and then recommitted as defensive tackle. Weird situation there. He wanted to go take visits. One of the very weird situations where they actually end up recommitting to the same school.
Yep.
It's just a matter of he wasn't going to break through. Again, I can't really afford to not, I don't want to say waste time because that's just like the wrong term for it. But if you're not showing flashes in year 2, it's kind of like, hey man, I have other guys that are going to flash quicker. I can go get a Dengoe who's got 3 years, has already proven it at the Power 5 level, and go get him, and he'll be my starter for 3 years if I retain him. I mean, Rutgers is pretty good at retention, so I can't imagine why they won't. But it's just tough. That's the way of the world. Like, and then you have a 4-star coming in Braxton Kyle, and then you have who probably should have been a 4-star, Giant Simon, coming in. So he was probably going to get passed up, and I still need to clear. I'm looking at the eligibility chart right now. They still need to clear 20 spots, and they want to add people still. So it's probably like more like 25 spots.
Yep.
So it's just end of the day. If you're not going to play, I need space.
Yep, totally makes sense. Aris Bethea was a true freshman. He had some Power 5 offers out of high school. Mm-hmm. What'd you hear happened with Aris Bethea?
Yeah, he's just too small at the end of the day. He's a guy that's kind of not struggling to put on weight. He put on solid weight, but I think he showed up at Rutgers at like 240-ish. I can't have a 240, 250, even 258 right now, if that's accurate. I can't have that at defensive tackle. I need big uglies in the trenches. I need Zaire Angoys and Doug Blue UIs, and I need a run stuffing defensive tackle. Even Daryl Dengoe, I keep referencing him. He's 300 pounds. Braxton Kyle's near 300 pounds. Like Giant Simon, I think is like 275. He's a true freshman. He'll pack it on. It's just a matter of depth at the end of the day. I don't really. I think he'll probably drop down a level if I had to guess. I'm kind of interested to see where and he kind of ends up. I know his brother ended up at Bowling Green when it was all said and done. I could see something like that, the MAC, around that type of level.
That makes sense. Next up is Sam Gady out of Trenton. He's in his 3rd year in the program, another walk-on. What'd you hear happened with Gady?
He's just a walk-on linebacker. There's a bunch of other dudes ahead of him. If you look at the linebacker room, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that are redshirt or true freshmen this upcoming season, including 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 incoming freshmen. Like, it's too tough to break through for him. Got Moses Walker ahead of him, Mohamed Toure, Dario Jabome, Abram Wright. Like, there was no way. Like, I could see another linebacker or two probably entering the portal just based on there's a couple walk-ons in that room still.
Next up is Fitzroy Legister. He was a guy who didn't really play a ton of high school ball, but was a track star, and I think was taken primarily on his physical attributes and just didn't work out. He started at receiver, moved to DB. I know he got hurt at some point. So this kind of makes sense for him to move on after not being able to really break out.
I think he had 300 yards as a senior at St. Peter's Prep. It's just, track star, take a flyer on him. I think they landed him in March or April. Yep. It was either right before spring, right after spring. I forget. But a guy that actually played 6 games as special teamer in his freshman year. Might have been 4 actually, because he might have redshirted freshman year. Then the second season he got hurt, and then the third season he this past season I think he played in 9 games as a special teamer. He's good. He's got speed, but he as a receiver he just really didn't have hands, and that's an issue, of course. So they switched him to DB. Played that nickel / cornerback role for Rutgers, star role as some people call it. Every team has a different terminology for it. But I didn't ever really see this one panning out too well. He had the speed, but he really didn't have the football skills. And some people ranked him top 10 in New Jersey for the recruiting class, which is wild.
Yeah. I think the most surprising portal entry was Antonio White, who was pretty highly rated, one of the better players in last year's class, from Georgia. He had a lot of offers. He entered the portal. What'd you hear happened with Antonio White?
Yeah, it just seems like it wasn't going to be a fit. You get guys in the program and you get them for a year. You kind of eyeball it and see like if they're a fit or not. you could tell based on just who they are. You could tell more about a player in a year, obviously, than just having them on campus for visits. But
Yep.
yeah, he's behind some guys at safety too. DK Gilly, you saw in the bowl game. He's probably next up at safety. Kaj Sanders, going to be a multi-year starter at safety now. They want to add a safety as on top of that. A guy that just wants to get out, probably go back closer to home. I don't know where he'll end up. I could see like a Georgia Tech taking a flyer on him. I could see a couple Power Fives taking a flyer on him, but it's a tough one here. Some off the field stuff. That's really it.
Here's a list of all the players that have entered so far. 3 have found a new school. Chris Long, the receiver, committed to Syracuse. Thomas Amonkwa, the receiver, committed to Delaware. And 4 actually. I'm sorry. Wesley Bailey ended up at Louisville, and Timmy Heinz-Peter ended up at UMass. So that is what we have going on for the transfers out. Let's talk a little bit about potential transfers in. So Rutgers has started showing interest in a couple new portal guys, but let's start off with Eric O'Neill. What's the update on Eric O'Neill? I know that there was a lot of buzz around him potentially ending up at Rutgers when he entered, which was before Christmas, and Christmas has come and gone, and now we're approaching New Year's, and we still have a lot of silence there. What are you hearing is happening with Eric O'Neill?
Sounds like he might want to take a couple more visits. It's up in the air right now. I know Oklahoma is pushing pretty heavily to get him on campus, so we'll see what happens there. It might just be a negotiation thing at this point, and that's just kind of how it works with the portal. These guys know what their value is. They have agents telling them that their value is probably higher than it really is too. He did visit Rutgers right before the dead period. I know last offseason when he entered the portal out of Long Island, he wanted to go to Rutgers. That was his dream, basically. Dream's probably a little bit of a stretch, but that was his goal. This offseason, he entered the portal, and it sounded like he also wanted to go to Rutgers again. Now, he was a little slighted by last offseason because Rutgers didn't really have much interest in him, but I kind of understand that from the fact that they had multiple starters, multi-year starters at Aaron Lewis and Wesley Bailey, and they also had Mohamed Toure, who was kind of rotating between linebacker and defensive end as well. They were really high on Jordan Thompson. They thought he'd flash a little bit more this season. So I kind of understand them not going after him last offseason. This offseason, he's priority number 1, it sounds like, on the defensive end, hot board, big board, whatever you want to call it. So we'll just kind of wait and see what happens. I was told that there was a good chance for a pre-Christmas announcement. It still sounds like Rutgers is probably in the lead there, although some others are definitely pushing him as well. I know North Carolina was one that was looking into him. That makes sense considering James Madison's right around the corner, sort of. SMU was another one. Oklahoma was one. There was another Texas school. I can't think of the name of them. But besides the point, there's a bunch of people looking into him and a bunch of people telling him, hey, just wait until the portal, or not the portal, the dead period ends. And I think the dead period, I know we said January 5th previously, and that's kind of correct, but I believe that's for high school kids. It looks like, if I read the calendar correctly, January 3rd will be or 2nd will be the first time that, or is it January 1st? I forget. It's earlier, whatever I sent to you the other day.
I think it was the 1st.
The 1st. The 1st is when it opens up for transfers from 2-year or 4-year institutions.
Yeah, it's considered a quiet period. So what that means is that you can't visit players at their homes or at their schools, but they can visit you on campus. So you can host recruits, but you can't go to their homes.
Exactly. So there we go. I expect him to probably take a visit at this point. It's already December 29th. It's a little concerning because you want to get him locked in. I think Rutgers would prefer to get him locked in before the new year. So we'll wait and see what happens over these next 2-3 days. So hopefully pop some champagne twice before the new year.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because I'm starting to get a little cagey on it too, given that the time between when it seemed like we were going to get them and now. A couple other players that you've heard Rutgers is showing interest on. You want to discuss those a bit?
Yeah, Jeffrey Emba, I forget how to pronounce it. He's a France native. You guys might be familiar with him because he was at St. Thomas More out of high school. And Rutgers actually had some interest in him out of high school as a 2020 kid. I forget. It was one of the kids that Greg Schiano actually first started showing interest in before, or when he first got the job, actually. So I think that was 2019. I don't remember. 2020. Yeah, I was right. So Jeffrey Emba, it's a school. St. Thomas More is a school that Rutgers has gotten really active with recently. They landed Sage Claudius, who's probably on the 2 deep next year at corner, or if not very close to it. And they also landed Jordan Houston this past cycle, a wide receiver who I think out of all the wide receivers might actually see some time or some snaps on the field this year. Jeffrey actually committed to Virginia over Rutgers, eventually decommitted, ended up at where the hell did he end up? JUCO, Independence Community College. Community College. Then ended up at Auburn, and then ended up at Purdue the past 2 seasons. At Purdue as a 2023 redshirt junior. He was a rotating defensive tackle for them. This past season, he was a starting defensive tackle for them, 6'6", 330 defensive tackle, or 310 defensive tackle. Now he gets an extra year of eligibility because of the JUCO rule. So now he entered the portal. He's got a lot of interest so far. I know Penn State's looking at him. I know Rutgers is looking at him. I know some other Big Ten schools are looking at him. It's not a guy that's been a significant contributor. Also, mind you, this Purdue defense was, for lack of a better term, ass this year. Yeah. But he had 30 tackles, 1 tackle for loss this past season. I think he's a solid just run stuffer at this point, like 6'6", 310, just throw him in the middle and just rotate him with Doug Blue Eli. I don't think he'd be a significant contributor in terms of stats, but I think he could be in terms of experience he would bring, Big Ten experience he would bring, and he's just goddamn massive. Between him, Zaire Angoy, and Doug Blue Eli, it's a pretty formidable run-stuffing defensive tackle rotation, if you get him.
Yeah, for sure. Isn't there a secondary player we're also showing interest in?
Yes, Jeremiah Johnson, Georgia State. He's got about like 20-something offers in the portal right now. A lot of people are in on him. Former JUCO also. Was at Georgia State, moved from corner to safety in 2023, earned all Sun Belt Conference honorable mention 2023, and all Sun Belt Conference second team in 2024. He's graded out pretty high as a safety per PFF. He's a little bit on the shorter side. He's 5'11", 192, and that's where Greg is kind of selling the whole, like, hey, look what I did with Christian Izzian. Look what he's doing in the NFL right now. So it's an easy sell from Rutgers' perspective. But when you have every school in the country, basically, or every Power 5 basically coming after you, I think it's going to be a tough one for Rutgers to land. But they are interested, so we'll see if they can get them on campus January 1st or the weekend, whatever weekend that is, January 3rd, 4th. So I think that's when you'll see more kids on campus. They're also going to try to make these visits kind of go hand in hand with their basketball schedule, so keep an eye on that. I know people might be pissed when you see like 10 people in the student section with the coaches.
Sure, but they will. There'll be comments, I'm sure.
Whatever. It is what it is at this point. But there's only two new names, other than Eric O'Neill, of course, that we've reported. But I know you have a pretty long list of follows that the staff is still looking for basically linebackers, corners, just about everything on defense.
Yeah, I'll pull up a post I made last week, which, we've been following who the staff's been following for about a month now, and broke down where they're following by position to kind of, I feel like, a single recruit or they're following this guy. It's like, well, whatever. They follow a lot of guys. When you look at it as like a data set, it kind of makes it a little bit more interesting. Let me just pull this up here. Because then I think you get a better idea of, they're actually going really hard at this position, or, this is not a position that they really are going hard at. Like, for example, they only followed 5 running backs all offseason. They landed the guy they wanted, and then they shut it down. But other positions, like we'll see in a minute, like defensive end, they followed, close to 50 or 60 at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this is a breakdown of who they followed by position. And this is as of, Monday? So we're a few days behind at this point. so I'll update this at some point. But so about 300 follows in total. 12% of them came at the offensive tackle position. A lot of receivers. They haven't followed any recently, but they did their due diligence when they were looking for a guy, and they ended up getting DT Sheffield. So they locked that down and ended it. Same thing with tight end. They went into a decent amount of guys. They got their guy, and then they shut that down. They haven't followed any recently. Anybody who thought maybe they'd go into the portal for a quarterback, that is clearly not happening. They didn't even follow a single one. Defensive tackle, defensive end, huge numbers here. 26.7% of all the follows that they've made. So over a quarter have been along the defensive line. And these defensive tackle follows have still continued to go up even as they've landed 2 guys. So they're clearly looking for at least one more.
Mm-hmm.
The end, most follows of any position, clearly a huge emphasis. Corners is a close second here at 41. They got Jacoby Henderson, but they continue to follow guys, so it tells me they're looking for at least one more. Safety, they're clearly looking for somebody, as you've talked about with Jeremiah Johnson. They've shown a lot of interest in other guys too. Mm-hmm. Haven't had any offers reported. Linebacker, they did have an offer reported from Carmicah Glass, who ended up committing the following day. He's a University of Louisiana Lafayette linebacker who committed to Houston. Mm-hmm. But they're continuing to follow a lot of linebackers in general. But that's kind of the breakdown of this. If you want more posts like this that break down a lot of portal stuff in depth, you can sign up for premium on Rutgers.rivals.com. Ask Richie any questions you want at any time. Is there a promo still going on right now?
If you do want to sign up, I can give you a nice little promo code. If you want just a free 30-day trial, it's 30, one word, 30 Rivals, RIVALS. If you want the yearly, I can get you like a 40 or 60% off code, probably 60% off actually. Only a couple of those left, so if you want that code, either DM me or email me or at Rivals Richie on Twitter, at Rutgers Rivals on Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want. Yeah.
Cool. So that's all we got in terms of portal stuff. You touch on the DC hunt, where things stand with that. Where are things currently with the defensive coordinator position?
We're starting to see more and more hires now that bowl games are just about over with the college football playoff being the lone. Well, I guess the Duke's Mail Bowl is in January too. But yeah, I mean, it's getting closer. I know another name came off the board. Ryan Walters is now officially or unofficially official. Washington, D.C. Stephen Belichick is unofficially official D.C. of North Carolina now. So it's kind of like our list is down to just 3 names. It's Tim Lukabu, NFL guy. 2 weeks left in that. Maybe they wait it out if he's the guy, just because the NFL season's almost over. I mean, the Carolina Panthers season has been over for a while, but they kind of bounced back too. So maybe he doesn't want to leave yet. Lyle Hemphill is another guy to keep an eye on, just because he has a lot of Northeast ties. They landed Daryl DeGoe. He's an up-and-comer, and they're also in pursuit of Eric O'Neill. Who's the third one? There was a third one. I can't remember his name. Damn it. Now I got to look it up.
Yeah, not sure.
I thought there was a third one. Maybe there's just 2, actually, at the moment. Let's see. Third one. Lyle Hemphill, Tim Lukabu. Oh, Jim Salgado, Louisiana defensive coordinator, safeties coach, was the third one on our list. I forget what connection he had to Rutgers. I think he coached at Hofstra with someone. Or a Northeast guy. Syracuse DB's coach in the past couple of years, NFL experience, Big Ten ties. It all kind of makes sense there. He coached with Cerise at Princeton. That's what it was. Obviously, Rutgers has a pretty good relationship with that family, considering their son is probably the future starting quarterback of the team. Who else? There's someone else. No, that's actually it right now. One thing I did want to say about the transfer portal too, we've had some people on the boards complain about the fact that Rutgers is filling gaps with G5 additions. I don't understand the hate there, to be honest. Most of these Power 5 kids that are leaving their programs, I'm not saying all of them, are leaving their programs because they can't play, they're not making the 2 deep, and they flat out stink. So they're going to try to rejuvenate their career based on their 4 or 5-star high school ranking and say, hey, I know I didn't produce at Georgia. Maybe I can go produce at Purdue. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. You look at some of the top portal ranked kids right now. The top offensive linemen are from Nevada and Rice. And where are they going? They're going to Oregon and Ohio State. So it's like the G5 produces a lot more than you think. The top quarterback in the portal, Devin Mensa, is heading from Tulane G5 to Duke. Got paid a shit ton to do it. There's just so many like lower level kids that are just jumping up and producing. We saw it this year with Dymere Miller. We saw it last year with Jaquay Jackson. Mind you, a couple injuries happened to him. So to hate on the fact that these G5 kids are coming up and filling gaps and saying like, oh yeah, they're G5 kids. Yeah, cool. It's cool they produce there. If a G5 kid can produce a G5, he can produce it to Power 5, like without a doubt in my mind. Now, is there some risks like taking like a D2 kid or like an NEC kid? Yeah, there is. But then you have JD DiRenzo go from Sacred Heart to Rutgers, best offensive lineman in his lone year there, to now playing in the NFL. Like, you can't hate on the fact that you have to trust the coach's evaluations first and foremost. And they've done pretty good, damn good with the transfer portal. Eric Rogers came from Northern Illinois. Who was the other DB? Christian Braswell came from Temple. And more than likely, both are going to be in the NFL next season, or at least in camps. I know Braswell will be in the NFL. I think Rogers will at least be in a camp. Like, you have to just trust these guys at the end of the day. And if you look throughout all of college football, Oregon's other best offensive line commit in the portal, Oregon, number one in the country right now, it's from Texas State. Like, let's just stop hating on like G5 kids and lower level. Like if these kids are good at that level, these schools obviously see it and they have college experience. They know they're going to be good at this level. So, end of rant.
Because you also got to think like, why are these kids under recruited then? So for linemen, think about the transformation the average lineman has to go from an 18-year-old to a 22-year-old. Mm-hmm. And then think of the average transformation a wide receiver has to make from an 18-year-old to a 22-year-old. It's not a whole lot of physical difference. It's a lot of, getting a lot of nuance down, and same thing for linemen. But the biggest jump you can make is, adding 50 pounds and maybe 2 inches, which a lot of kids do when they get to college. So it shouldn't surprise that a lot of lower level linemen are making a jump up, because maybe he was only 6'2", 240 when he entered an FCS, and then he kept growing. Or he was able to add weight when he was like a string bean in high school. Maybe he came into college as a 190-pound defensive end. Like, good luck getting into, in Alabama with that kind of stature. And then if you add 60 pounds in 2 years, that's gonna change how people view you, because maybe they didn't think you could add that weight. Mm-hmm. So I'd much rather have a guy, like you said, who dominates at a lower level and see if he could continue playing well at the upper level, than a guy who can't play at the upper level, maybe at an elite school, and then trying to see if he can play there. So I think it's more likely that the guy succeeds who dominates at a lower level than doesn't play at a higher level. But that's just me.
Offensive line is the hardest position to judge. Like, even at a high school, unless you're a massive 6'6", 300 pounds already, and producing at that 6'6", 300 pounds, it's so hard to judge and so hard to see like how these kids are going to develop at the next level. Cool, you're massive against like Group 1 New Jersey. Like, great. Yeah. Like, you mauled me as the defensive end. Thanks. Like, great job, kid.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just the hardest position to evaluate. So that's why like these second year, third year guys from Grambling State are going to Power 5. Ball State are going to the Power 5. Like, that's just the way of the world. That's how the portal works now. And so I wouldn't hate too much on these G5 transfers. I think DT Sheffield's a stud. I think CJ Campbell is a flat out stud, and crazy enough might be your best running back next year, which is insane to say considering Antoine Raymond just ran for 100+ yards on 8-9 carries against Kansas State. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. I forgot to say shout out to Josh Blackston. He earned a Under Armour All-American game invite. It's something we hinted at for quite some time now, and it finally happened. Interestingly enough, though, he will be joined by a Rutgers teammate, but that's not a 2025 kid, because the All-Star games now feature 2026 and 2027 kids, and any grade can technically play in it. I don't agree with it. I think it's dumb, I think it should just be seniors, personally. But 2026 wide receiver Dysere Carter will be on his team, on Team Icon. And on the opposing team will be 2026 QB target Derek Zammit. So you get to see a glimpse of what he might actually be against top-level competition. Now, not to say the Big North is not top level, because it is, but this is the Big North of all stars, basically. Or better competition, just put it like that. So we'll get to see that January 2nd. It's on ESPN, 4 p.m. kickoff down in Florida. So keep an eye out for that. We get to see Blackston, we get to see Dysere Carter, and we get to see Derek Zammit. So good little evaluation tool for college coaches, at least. But I just still don't agree that non-seniors should be playing in this game.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of weird.
Be a fun game to watch. That is all I've got, though. We'll keep you updated as things kind of continue to happen in the portal and on the coaching staff. But for me and Rich, this has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast, signing off.